आप शायद जानते होंगे कि 10 में से केवल एक स्टार्टअप ही कामयाब हो पाता है। लेकिन क्या आप ये जानते हैं कि पूरी दुनिया में सबसे ज्यादा स्टार्टअप वाले देश के तौर पर भारत टॉप 3 देशों में है। इससे साफ जाहिर है कि भारत में ज्यादा से ज्यादा लोग स्टार्टअप शुरू करने की ओर अपने कदम बढ़ा रहे हैं। अगर आप भी अपना स्टार्टअप शुरू करने का इरादा रखते हैं, लेकिन जरूरत है एक बेहतरीन स्टार्टअप आइडिया की, तो फिक्र न करें। बिजनेस पाठशाला आपके लिए हर महीने पहले और तीसरे सोमवार दोपहर 3 बजे से लेकर आता है आपके स्टार्टअप की सक्सेस की पहली सीढ़ी, यानी स्टार्टअप आइडियाज। और साथ ही इसके जूम सेशन में एक्सपर्ट से डायरेक्ट कनेक्ट करके आप अपने सभी डाउट्स भी आसानी से क्लियर कर सकते हैं। तो अब आप भी ओला, नायका, पेटीएम और पॉलिसी बाजार जैसा ही अपना स्टार्टअप शुरू कीजिए और सफलता के आसमान में उड़ने को तैयार हो जाइए।
नेशन चॉइस अवार्ड 100 टॉप एजुकेटर्स, यंग ऑथर ऑफ द ईयर 2020, यूथ लीडर अवार्ड और करमवीर चक्र अवार्ड जैसे कई अवार्ड से सम्मानित श्री यश तिवारी जी मेंटरशिप, पब्लिक स्पीकिंग और ट्रेनिंग के क्षेत्र में एक जाना माना नाम है। ग्लोबली रिनाउंड प्लेटफॉर्म टेडएक्स पर टेड टॉक और जोश टॉक्स डिलीवर कर चुके श्री यश तिवारी जी मेंटल हेल्थ एडवोकेट और मोटिवेशनल गाइड के रूप में भी प्रसिद्ध हैं। ब्लिस्टर्स ऑफ द बैटल, अ सेलिब्रेशन इन ट्रिब्यूलेशन और पैंडेमिक 2020, राइफ ऑफ द वायरस जैसी बेस्ट सेलर्स के ऑथर श्री यश तिवारी जी ने विजन और पैशन से अपनी अलग और खास पहचान बनाई है। देश विदेश में अपनी प्रतिभा से सभी को प्रभावित कर चुके श्री यश तिवारी जी इंटरनेशनल रिकॉर्ड होल्डर के अलावा इंटरनेशनल रेडियो होस्ट के तौर पर भी लोकप्रिय हैं। ग्लोबल यूथ मेंटर और सॉफ्ट स्किल ट्रेनर श्री यश तिवारी जी का बिजनेस पाठशाला में एक्सपर्ट के तौर पर हम स्वागत करते हैं।
Hi there, this is Yash Tiwari, a global youth mentor and international award-winning public speaker and a best-selling author of many books. In this session today, we are going to be talking about something really insightful, which is going to be on the topic of lean startup methodology to overcome challenges. Now, this is something that as an aspiring entrepreneur, a theory, an ideology, a methodology, as an aspiring entrepreneur, as an aspiring business person, you must be aware of. It is something that is innovative, that will help you in growing your business, growing your platforms, growing your startups. It will definitely help you in overcoming the greatest of challenges that are faced by aspiring entrepreneurs when they are just starting out with their startups. Speaking of which, let us firstly begin our discussion by thinking of and talking a little bit about what are the various challenges that are faced by most of the startups. Because when we are talking about an aspiring entrepreneur, when we are talking about an aspiring business person, there are challenges which you are aware of. There are challenges which you try to overlook, but then there are challenges which are associated with all forms of startups and all forms of business platforms whatsoever. Now, the challenges are a part of the journey, it goes without saying, but they must be overcome as well. You need to figure out the strategies, the methodologies, the ideologies, and the ways with which the challenges can be overcome. And as a matter of fact, it goes without saying that every business platform will have their own version of the challenges. Maybe even it can vary from one business to the other, both offering the same products but with a different business plan. And as a matter of fact, across different industries, the challenges certainly are different. Like for example, if we take the time frame of the pandemic itself, there were industries which are absolutely shattered. There were business platforms and startups which could not function at all, whereas there were the others who could. There were the other platforms which could sustain themselves during the pandemic as well. The point to be noted over here is every single startup, every single business platform has a distinction, has a differentiation, and that differentiation definitely differentiates the challenges that one and all face in comparison to one another. But then again, There are some fundamental challenges, just like the fundamental principles which help you in getting out of these challenges, which are mostly faced by most of the business platforms or startups for that matter. When we are talking about the lean startup methodology, the primary aim of the same is to actually give you the insight about how to survive through the challenges, how to make sure that your business platform is able to navigate through all the challenges that are met by most of the platforms. But before we go into the discussion about all of this, let us take a look at what the many challenges or what the common challenges might be faced by most of the startups and most of the business platforms. Firstly, comes the point of the ineffective marketing. Now, when we are talking about ineffective marketing, I think the better space to start this discussion would be to start talking about marketing itself. And when we are talking about marketing, it goes without saying that marketing is all about the greater, better, and wider representation of your brand image, of your products, of your services, of your startup, of your platform. Basically, whatever entity you are or you belong to or you associate yourself with, the representation of it in a very effective manner and on a greater and wider manner for the huge reach of the platform and everything that it is offering, basically to generate a huger audience base or a customer base for your platform, is what marketing is all about. Now, in today's modern world, it goes without saying that marketing is also modernizing. The marketing that we see right now is not even remotely similar to how the marketing tactics were, let's say, 50 years ago or even 100 years ago. And it is quite obvious because the resources, and more than that, the platforms, the avenues, the technology which is available readily at the moment was not even made back then, or not entirely in the capacity that it is readily available to most of the people right now. So it also revolutionizes how the marketing is supposed to be. But this is where it can get a bit tricky as well. But the one thing that remains the same across all the decades, all the eras, is the fact that marketing is essential. There is no denying of the fact. Whether you talk about the online marketing or you talk about the offline marketing or you talk about some other, medium of marketing altogether, marketing is essential. The marketing of the product, the marketing of the services, the marketing of everything that your startup, your platform is offering is essential. The challenge, however, comes when it is ineffective. When the marketing is not being done effectively, or there is a degree of reluctance by the leaders of a startup or a platform, or even the team that is running the marketing in regards to how well or how much the marketing of a product should be done. That can be one of the reasons, but the ineffectiveness of the marketing can also be because of so many other things, like lack of knowledge, not having proper knowledge of what marketing means or how to do the marketing effectively or why is it even important, or something like having even a lack of resource, not having the capital, like the money which is required, the funds which are required to properly effectively do the marketing across all the avenues, on the newspapers as well, on the news platforms as well, and various other things. It could also be because of excessive focus on other avenues of a startup rather than marketing at all, which can be considered similar to reluctance but not entirely, because at times you genuinely have to redirect your focus towards the other avenues which might in that moment require a greater degree of your attention, but that doesn't diminish the value of marketing in that instance in any manner, which is why it is often said that as an entrepreneur you somewhat have to be an all-rounder. You have to look across various avenues all at once. You have to juggle with so many things all at once. Even though there might be challenges in each of the avenue, you still have to make through day. So it does happen that marketing at times is hampered because of one or the many reasons that have been listed. But ineffective marketing definitely comes as a huge challenge for any startup whatsoever. After which comes the point of the knowledge and skill gaps. Now, this is something which interestingly, should not be a problem, but it certainly is. Because in order to have a startup, in order to kickstart a business, you must have knowledge about it, right? I mean, that is how you start a business, that is how you initiate a startup. It goes without saying. But in reality, it is not the case with many platforms around the world. Yes, it is true that when you come up with an idea, you should explore it right away. But having a basic knowledge about what you are doing is also very important. Not only does it make you better at doing it, even when you're doing it for the very first time, but it gives you a sense of efficiency as well. You will be able to do the same amount of assignment or work or marketing in just a few hours than you would have done in days upon days, just because you were not knowledgeable about it. The same goes for any aspiring entrepreneur. If you are establishing a startup, even if you have all the funds required for it and you are using the same, you are establishing it, make sure that you have a knowledge about it. You actually know what sector you are delving yourself in. You know what exact sector or what exact avenue you are investing yourself. You know the fashion arena where you are establishing a startup. You know the, let's say, fooding avenues where you are starting your own restaurant chain, whatever it might be for you, but have proper and basic knowledge about it. And the same can apply for your team as well. Whatever sort of a team you are gathering up, of your team members, your employees, your staffers, they need to be properly aware, thoroughly aware of what exactly your concept of startup is as well. They need to know what exactly they are working on, which of course is about knowledge. Now, skills is a whole different conversation. Skills can be something like having basic communication skill, having the technical skills which are required to even operate a computer whenever and wherever required. Things as basic as the most basic skills, which apparently many of the aspiring entrepreneurs or team members do not possess, which in the longer run become an issue. Because at every phase of the working process of a startup, the functionality of a startup, as I mentioned, challenges can be there in so many other views, in so many other representations. It is not just the commercial challenge that every startup will face. Absolutely not. There could be a whole different challenge that perhaps a certain startup is facing, which requires the skill set needed for it. If, let's say, there is a communication gap, a lot of arguments are erupting in your platform, what will you do? You need the good communication skills, the basic communication skills required to overcome that challenge. But these challenges are not always conventional in nature. They can vary from platform to platform, which is why the lean startup methodology that we are going to be talking about ahead in the session today will be very valuable for every person to learn of. But as we continue with the discussion, the next huge challenge can also be about the financial management, which once again is something that so many startups, so many platforms struggle with. And it is, by the way, not the lack of resources or the lack of investors or investments towards your platform. It is the lack of management of the funds. Like, it is always stated that for the expansion of your platform, you need the capital, you need the funds. If you want to enhance the infrastructure, you need the funds for it. If you want to expand your team, you need the funds for it. But then, even when the funds are coming, even when you have the required capital for it, how effectively are you able to manage it? How effectively are you able to utilize it? How are you able to plan the budgets as per what is really required versus what you are just embellishing a certain startup with? You need to figure out the basic requirements of your startup. Then you need to figure out what are the other avenues where the funds can be allocated. But finances as a whole is not just about funds, to be clear. It can be about the paychecks as well. It can be about the profit margins as well. It can be about the overall revenue as well. It can be about the spendings, the expenditures as well. So many other things from day-to-day basis. Even the smallest of bills that are coming for the building that you are renting, as you know, the avenue, the office for your startup. How are you managing it all properly? If that management is not done with efficiency and with full focus, alongside managing the other things, the financial become an issue. The financials become a concern, and these financials will need to be taken care of sooner or later. Which is why overcoming this challenge also becomes absolutely essential for any startup whatsoever. But after that comes another challenge, which is somewhat related to what we just discussed of securing the funding. Now, fundings are required, as I've mentioned you, for one and many things. There is no category of where all the funds are required for. The funds can be required for almost any avenue in terms of a startup that you are establishing, from the employees that you want to expand to the employees that you want to train with a specific workshop, from the company site that you want to enhance, like the infrastructure that you want to raise further, to the technology that you want to improve upon that your company possesses. Everything requires capital, and not every time is this capital coming from your own budget, right? It is not coming from your own pocket all of the time. At times this capital is actually generated from the funding, the investments that you receive, mostly externally. But then in order for you to receive these investments or to sign up with investors, there is a challenge. You need to make sure that the investors actually are interested in investing towards your platform, or people who can fund your business would really be interested. Entities that possibly can support your business by the fundings are up for the funding collaborations, because then only you will be able to generate the capital that is required to grow your startup from the grassroots level. Of course, all of that requires a strong business concept in your mind based on which you work upon it all. But then again, there are various other challenges that are also faced, especially when we talk about something like securing the funds. Now, how to overcome it all will definitely be talked about in the discussion ahead as well. Now, there can be some other challenges as well, like hiring the right people or leadership itself. Now, when it comes to hiring the right people, it simply refers to the fact that you need to hire the people that would actually contribute to your platform. Many a times, people apply for a position at a certain company just for the sake of it, without the required skill set for it. Now, as somebody in the leadership position, as somebody who is initiating a startup of their own, you need to think of why exactly do you hire every single individual that you do hire yourself. If there is somebody, let's say, the HR that is doing it for you, then there should be a mechanism set in place which defines exactly the criteria required for hiring somebody, that defines specifically the skills that are required to hire somebody. But then beyond all of it, the hiring is not as simple as checking out the skills of a person and hiring them right away. There are other challenges as well, which can even come to the leadership itself. As a leader initiating the startup, how efficient you are, how effective you are, how present you are. Maybe there is a lot that requires your attention in the other avenues of the platform, like the funding or the finances, but that doesn't mean that you are entirely overlooking the other relevant avenues as well, like the marketing or the hiring or the team or the skilling. All of the things all together are required to be taken care of by somebody in the leadership position. So in order to challenge the challenges, because as a leader, there will be so many avenues left and right where you will see the challenges in your startup and you will have to face them head straight. But how do you tackle them is something that we will guide you about with the lean startup methodology and the other solutions in the session ahead today. Now, there can be some other challenges too, like communication, building customers, and much more. But beyond the challenges, let us now start talking about the solutions. When we are talking of the solution, we have the lean startup methodology for all of you to learn about. Standard approaches to business development are not applicable to startups. Unlike businesses, startups operate on innovation. They are funded and scaled differently, and they have different aims. Startups' aim is to bring an innovation to the masses rather than follow a beaten path of the well-known business scheme. Before we start talking about the lean startup methodology, you have to think of what you refer to as a startup. Is the startup just supposed to be within the confines of the conventional business models, or is it something that can be much bigger? Is it something that is defined by the traditional norms of how companies or businesses work, or is it something that is driven more by the modern ideologies, technologies, and perceptions? The answer, of course, is the latter one. Because with a startup, your aim is to innovate, your aim is to renovate, your aim is to generate something that is creatively unique, that is inspiring, and that genuinely delivers a solution to your customers. Solutions to problems that they might not even be aware of, but things that can revolutionize the world and make the life of every person easier. With aims like these, if you are initiating a startup, your startup automatically will have an edge in the market because you know that you are doing something which is far bigger, far greater, and with a far monumental aim in comparison to the other platforms, even competitors that might already exist in the market. You have to figure out firstly what a startup means for you. Because if we say that different sorts of startups face different sorts of challenges, then we also need to emphasize on the fact that startups are different. They are naturally and inherently different. So, unless you are not able to figure out what you personally define a startup as, how will you be able to figure out what are the challenges that you need to deal with? Now, when it comes to dealing with the challenges of any startup whatsoever, the lean startup methodology plays a huge role. This lean startup methodology can help you in streamlining the process, simplifying the issues, finding a solution, and definitely benefiting your startup and even growing and accelerating your startup at a much faster pace. Now, what are the reasons for a startup's failure? Try to look at that as well, because before we go into the deep discussion about either the lean startup methodology or the solutions, the various other solutions, you need to understand what genuinely causes a concern for any aspiring entrepreneur, or what are those concerns of any startup that need to be tackled in the first place. Firstly, application of traditional business instruments of management, success measurement, building strategies, and market investigation. These conventional tools are almost useless for startups which act in condition of uncertainty. Think about it this way. There might be a computer which runs with the old technology, while you are using the pen drives, or let's say the devices which have a whole different port, something that cannot even fit in the old computer. It doesn't mean that the old computer is entirely useless. It means that for the specific device, for your mobile phone perhaps that you're trying to connect it with, it is not up to it. It has not been made for it. These two things belong to different generations. Your mobile phone from the modern generation might not connect with a computer that was generated decades ago. It doesn't simply say that one is obsolete and the other is new. It states that one device operates with the technology of a certain time period, the other device operates with the technology of another time period. You know where the problem arises? The problem comes when you force one device into the other just because you have to. Think about the same analogy in terms of a business model, any startup model. Let's say you have studied a lot about the old aged businesses, their traditional conventions, their guidelines, their business models, and much more. But then again, what you are missing out on is the fact that these ideologies, these perceptions, even the problems that those old businesses tried to solve in the very initial phase are from a different generation. The tools which were used to measure the success of the businesses back in the day, let's say decades ago or centuries ago, are not even applicable to the demographies of the present world. The problems that these businesses of the past were tackling might not even be that big of a concern in the present tense. What you have to figure out is that all your business ideas, your concepts, your startup thoughts, are they based on the measuring tools or the technologies or the ideologies or the perceptions or the models of the businesses of the far past? Or are they actually driven by the modern world? Are they energized with the new technologies, the new ideologies, the new perceptions, and even the problems of the present day world that you want to solve? Because you have to understand that when you are starting a business or you are establishing a startup in the modern tense, it needs to function with the modernity of time as well. It needs to function with the modern tools, technologies, and avenues that we have, and not just be dependent on the old and obsolete of the past. You have to understand that when you are generating a business concept or a startup idea in the modern tense, then it has to be in a coherence with the modern times as well, and not with the past all of the time. But there is another huge reason why many of the startups struggle, which is actually on the opposite end of the spectrum, much contrary to what we just talked about, which is of exactly the opposite reason. Seeing that this doesn't work, entrepreneurs start ignoring the above mentioned tools and any other management strategies. When you are reading the strategies of a business model that might have existed, let's say, a century ago or 2 centuries ago, you of course will come to the conclusion that it is not entirely applicable in the modern world, which is fine. It is fine to think that way. But the issue is you cannot discard the validity of it. You might not consider it the right fit for the present day conditions of the market, of the economy, of the consumers, and everything. But the validity of the concept itself, which did work at a certain time back then, should be maintained, should be valued. If anything, try to think of why did that business model work out back then? How was it able to solve the issues of the consumers back in the day? Something that you can perhaps apply in the present tense with your business model as well. What is that thing? What is it that you can learn from even an old, even a very conventional business strategy or an ideology or a methodology of the past to apply in the present, to basically deliver in the form of a modernized, revolutionary business concept in the present tense? Sometimes, depending on the old ideologies, might not be the right call, but learning from the old ideologies can be a great call. Sometimes, depending on an old business model, might not be the right fit for the present day market conditions, but learning from what worked out and how it worked out back in the day for any business model can deliver a great benefit to you as an aspiring entrepreneur, as an aspiring business person, and for your business as well as for your consumers. So make sure that you are neither entirely depending on the old conventional strategies of the past, nor are you discarding them entirely. You are learning from them, but you are also modernizing the process with which you run a business, with which you initiate a startup. Now, when we are talking about the lean startup methodology, this is something that every aspiring entrepreneur must be aware of. The lean startup methodology can be categorized as a guideline system for solving a problem, and it copes with the tasks highly efficiently, slicing and dicing every single aspect of the innovative enterprise. You are basically depending on a guideline system for any sort of a challenge that might be thrown towards your startup or towards you as an aspiring entrepreneur. How do you navigate through it? How do you figure your way out of it? Needing a GPS navigation system, this can act as your GPS navigation system. Needing a solution, this can act as the guideline leading you up to the solution. Any startup is a huge experiment that was created to answer a question. And the question is not, can we create this product? but rather, should we create this product? And also, is it possible to build an effective business around set this service and product? As I always say, whenever we are talking about products and services, that we are supposed to value the ideas that come up in our mind. As an aspiring entrepreneur, you must value every single concept, every single idea that comes to your mind. And at the same time, you have to objectively think about how do you navigate through it. You are not supposed to think of whether that idea is good or not. You are supposed to think of if it is good, how do you establish it? If it is bad, how do you improve upon it? And then once you do, how do you develop an entire business around it? This is what the lean startup methodology also hints on. That as an aspiring entrepreneur, firstly begin with asking the right questions. Don't ask simply that can you create a product? It is not that way. You can create a product. Affirm yourself about it. The question that you should ask is, should you create that product, and is it possible to build an effective business around this set of services and products for a greater growth? Now, when we talk about the lean startup methodology, there are some basic principles of the same which we are now going to be discussing about. Entrepreneurs are everywhere. Anyone who has a startup is an entrepreneur. According to Eric Ries, who basically conceptualized it, lean startup principles can be applied to companies of any kind and size. Think of the entrepreneurs existing in all the avenues of life. There are entrepreneurs who are able to think of businesses even around a single napkin that you pick up in a certain restaurant. There are entrepreneurs who are thinking of a new business idea the moment they pick up a glass of water in a certain cafe. Something very simple, but it generates a curiosity in their mind. When you live with that sense of curiosity, it enables you to look for solutions in all directions as well whenever a challenge arises for you as an aspiring entrepreneur. The manager should be able to act in conditions of uncertainty, and employees should be encouraged to do as many experiments as possible. As a leader, as a manager, as somebody who is in the authorial position, you have to think of how you can really contribute, not just in terms of, let's say, solving the problems, but also allowing the employees, allowing the people in your platform to be able to experiment around, to tinker around as well. Yes, solve every problem that you can, but delegate as well. Inform others as well. Guide others as well. Enable others to ask the questions, ask the queries, and let them raise their hand to know more about what they are working on. The reason why business plans are needed to be talked more about with the platform in terms of the people who work for you, the team, the core team that works for you, is because when you allow the people around you to know more about what the problem is that you all collectively as a startup team are solving, that you all collectively are making products for or services for, that is when innovation happens. That is when different people coming from different walks of life are able to bring in different solutions on the same table, and that is when a startup flourishes. Also, build measure learn loop. This lean startup principle has it that a product or service should be designed and presented to the market as soon as possible. For this, the following scheme should be applied: idea, build, product, measure, data, and learn. Let us recapitulate for you: idea, build, product, measure, data, and learn. It implies a determination of a hypothesis, seeing what can happen, and acting accordingly. So it gives you an idea, a strategy basically for you to function properly and for your startup to function properly as well. Now, innovation accounting is also a very essential aspect of the lean startup methodology, a principle that you need to know of. An aspiring entrepreneur should understand how the progress should be measured, how to set up the milestone, and how to prioritize work. A startup needs to objectively assess its current position and then start experimenting on improvement, pausing once in a while to see whether a pivot is needed or where a pivot is needed. Because when you research, when you assess, when you study how the present condition is of the startup or the platform, that is when you are able to figure out where is the improvement is needed, where the growth is needed, what more can be done to improve the present stage of the startup. And who knows, maybe even solve the greatest of challenges faced by the startup for its further growth and advancement. So I hope that in the session today you got to learn something interesting, insightful and valuable. To learn more about the world of businesses, entrepreneurships and startups, check out our other videos as well.
बिजनेस पाठशाला में हम आपके लिए लेकर आते हैं कुछ ऐसे यूनिक बिजनेस आइडियाज जो आपको एक सफल उद्यमी बना सकते हैं। इसी कड़ी में आज हम सर्विस इंडस्ट्री के कुछ हाईली प्रॉफिटेबल बिजनेस ऑप्शंस के बारे में आपको बताएंगे। इस सेगमेंट का पहला बिजनेस आइडिया ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री से रिलेटेड है। ये है कार वॉशिंग का एवरग्रीन बिजनेस। आजकल लोगों की बिजी लाइफस्टाइल को देखते हुए कार वॉशिंग काफी ट्रेंडिंग बिजनेस आइडिया बन गया है। जैसा कि आप नाम से समझ गए होंगे, कार वॉशिंग सर्विस में कार की इंटीरियर एक्सटीरियर क्लीनिंग, वॉशिंग और पॉलिशिंग की जाती है। ये कार ओनर्स का टाइम और एफर्ट दोनों ही रिड्यूस करती है। इसलिए कार वॉशिंग आजकल काफी पॉपुलर बिजनेस आइडिया बन गया है। इस सर्विस की सबसे खास बात यह है कि कस्टमर रिक्वायरमेंट के अनुसार इसे कस्टमाइज भी किया जा सकता है। कार वॉशिंग बिजनेस को अगर आप स्मॉल स्केल पर शुरू करना चाहते हैं तो इसके लिए करीब 1000 स्क्वायर फीट एरिया, 5 से 7 किलोवाट इलेक्ट्रिक लोड कनेक्शन और 5 से 6 मैन पावर की रिक्वायरमेंट होगी। ये व्यवसाय आपको करीब 28% से 31% तक प्रॉफिट दे सकता है और इसे स्मॉल स्केल में मात्र 25 से 28 लाख के इन्वेस्टमेंट के साथ शुरू किया जा सकता है। हमारा अगला बिजनेस आइडिया आपको लगभग 20% से 25% तक मुनाफा दे सकता है। ये है ऑफसेट प्रिंटिंग बिजनेस, जिसमें मल्टी कलर इंक के जरिए अलग अलग तरह की पेपर शीट्स या श्रिंक लैमिनेशन शीट्स पर प्रिंटिंग होती है। न्यूज़पेपर, बुक्स, मैगजीन्स, बिल बुक, फॉर्म्स, मैनुअल, ब्रोशर्स आदि में ऑफसेट प्रिंटिंग की जाती है। स्मॉल स्केल पर इस बिजनेस को 1000 स्क्वायर फीट एरिया, 5 किलोवाट इलेक्ट्रिक लोड कनेक्शन और 4 से 5 मैन पावर के साथ आप शुरू कर सकते हैं। ऑफसेट प्रिंटिंग बिजनेस को सेमी ऑटोमेटिक मशीन्स के साथ शुरू करने के लिए मशीनरी कॉस्ट लगभग 6 लाख प्लस जीएसटी होगी। इसी कड़ी में आगे बढ़ते हुए अब हम आपको बताएंगे टेक्सटाइल डाइंग और प्रिंटिंग बिजनेस के बारे में। डाइंग और प्रिंटिंग क्लॉथ फैब्रिकेशन के लिए काफी जरूरी प्रोसेस है। अट्रैक्टिव डिजाइनर पैटर्न्स और कलर्स का यूज करने से टेक्सटाइल और फैब्रिक्स की अपीयरेंस एनहांस होती है। डाइंग के लिए नेचुरल या सिंथेटिक डाइज का इस्तेमाल प्रोडक्शन से लेकर फिनिश्ड फैब्रिक पर यानी डिफरेंट लेवल पर किया जा सकता है। वहीं प्रिंटिंग फैब्रिक के अपर सरफेस यानी ऊपरी सतह पर की जाती है। स्मॉल स्केल पर इस बिजनेस को शुरू करने के लिए लगभग 3000 से 3500 स्क्वायर मीटर एरिया, 100 से 120 किलोवाट इलेक्ट्रिक लोड कनेक्शन और 40 मैन पावर की रिक्वायरमेंट होगी। इस बिजनेस को लगभग 65 से 70 लाख के इन्वेस्टमेंट में शुरू करके 18% से 20% तक प्रॉफिट कमा सकते हैं। आखिर में अब हम बात करेंगे ड्राई क्लीनिंग बिजनेस के बारे में। ट्रेडिशनल लॉन्ड्री में जहां पानी का इस्तेमाल होता है, वहीं ड्राई क्लीनिंग के लिए ड्राई क्लीनिंग मशीन में पर क्लोरोइथिलीन केमिकल यूज करके कपड़ों में लगे दाग धब्बों को साफ किया जाता है। रेयॉन, सिल्क, लेदर या वेलवेट जैसे कई फैब्रिक हैं जिन्हें पानी से धोने पर ये खराब हो जाते हैं, इसलिए इनकी ड्राई क्लीनिंग होती है। ड्राई क्लीनिंग बिजनेस को स्मॉल स्केल पर लगभग 1000 से 1500 स्क्वायर फीट एरिया और 15 से 20 किलोवाट इलेक्ट्रिक लोड कनेक्शन के साथ शुरू किया जा सकता है। इसके लिए 15 से 20 मैन पावर की भी रिक्वायरमेंट होगी। इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात करें तो ड्राई क्लीनिंग बिजनेस के लिए जरूरी मशीन्स की कॉस्ट लगभग 25 से 30 लाख है और टोटल इन्वेस्टमेंट करीब 30 से 40 लाख का करना होगा। इस बिजनेस के जरिए आप 18% से 23% तक का प्रॉफिट अर्न कर सकते हैं। तो ये थे आज के हमारे बिजनेस आइडियाज। अगले सेगमेंट में नए बिजनेस आइडियाज के साथ हम आपसे फिर मिलेंगे। अब आप जूम सेशन के जरिए एक्सपर्ट से डायरेक्ट कनेक्ट कर सकते हैं। जूम सेशन का लिंक आपको YouTube चैट बॉक्स में मिल जाएगा। धन्यवाद।